The first time Olivia saw him, she felt something was off. The boy sat on the cold stone bench outside the library, his head tilted downward, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the surface. It wasn't unusual to see someone sitting alone, but the way he sat, so still, so detached, made her stomach tighten. It was late, the streetlights humming softly, casting long shadows across the pavement. Olivia hesitated. She wasn't the type to approach strangers, but something about him pulled at her. She took a step closer, then another. His clothes were ordinary, a dark hoodie, faded jeans. But there was something unnatural about his presence, like he didn't belong here. Or maybe he did, and she didn't. A chill ran through her. The closer she got, the more her chest tightened, an invisible weight pressing down. She swallowed hard. "Hey, are you okay?" Her voice came out softer than she intended, almost swallowed by the night air. The boy didn't react. Not a single twitch. It was as if he hadn't heard her at all. Olivia glanced around. The street was empty, just the faint hum of passing cars a block away. She took another cautious step and, without thinking, reached out. Her fingers brushed his shoulder. Cold. Not just cool, but ice cold, as if she had touched stone. A shiver crawled down her spine. That's when he moved. Slowly, he lifted his head. Olivia's breath hitched. His face was pale, almost colorless, his lips a faint shade of blue. But it was his eyes that sent a jolt of fear through her. They weren't right. Too dark, too empty, like staring into a void. "You can touch me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Olivia felt her pulse hammer in her ears. Something about his voice made her want to take a step back, but her legs wouldn't move. Then he spoke again. "You can touch me, but you can't help me." A sharp gust of wind rushed past, rustling the trees, carrying the boy's words away like a secret meant for the night alone. Olivia's breath came in shallow bursts. She didn't know why, but her instincts screamed at her to run, to turn away and never look back. Yet, something held her in place. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to understand why he was here, sitting alone in the dark, speaking words that made no sense. But before she could form the question, the boy did something that sent ice through her veins. He smiled. Not a warm, grateful smile. Not even a sad one. It was empty. Hollow. A smile that didn't belong on a human face. And then, as if the night itself swallowed him whole, the boy disappeared. Olivia staggered backward, her breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled. She blinked rapidly, trying to convince herself that her eyes were playing tricks on her. But the bench was empty. No sign that anyone had ever been there. No footprints on the damp pavement. No lingering warmth. Just nothing. Her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, jolting her back. With shaking hands, she pulled it out. A message. No name. No number. Just 3 words glowing on the screen. "Don't help him." A chill wrapped around her, seeping into her bones. She looked around, suddenly hyper-aware of the shadows stretching along the sidewalk, the way the streetlights flickered as if struggling to stay alive. She didn't know who sent the message. She didn't know what she had just seen. But one thing was clear. The boy wasn't gone. He was still here, watching, waiting. And she had already made a mistake. Olivia's hands tightened around her phone as she stared at the screen. The words blurred slightly as her pulse pounded in her ears. She looked up again, scanning the sidewalk, the empty bench, the distant flicker of streetlights. The boy was gone, but that didn't mean he had left. She felt it. That strange, heavy presence lingering in the air, pressing down on her like unseen hands. She turned in slow, hesitant steps, trying to convince herself it was nothing. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe she was just tired, her mind playing tricks on her. But her gut told her otherwise. The way the night air suddenly felt colder, the way the trees whispered in the wind like voices just out of reach, it was wrong. every part of it. Her fingers hovered over her phone's screen. Call someone. Text a friend? But what would she even say? Hey, I just met a boy who vanished into thin air, and now I'm getting creepy messages. No one would believe her. She barely believed it herself. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to move. Whatever this was, she wasn't staying here to find out. She turned on her heel, walking fast, almost running, back toward her apartment. The city streets were emptier than usual, the hum of life reduced to distant echoes. Her building was only a few blocks away, but the journey felt longer, as if something was stretching time, making her hyper-aware of every shadow, every rustling sound behind her. When she finally reached the entrance, she exhaled sharply and pushed through the glass doors, stepping into the dimly lit lobby. The old security guard, Mr. Reeves, barely glanced up from his newspaper. Olivia hesitated before moving toward the elevator. "Hey, Mr. Reeves?" she called softly. The old man lowered his paper, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah?" She hesitated. What was she even asking? If he had seen a boy outside? If he had ever felt something strange around here? She shook her head, forcing a small smile. "Never mind. Have a good night." He gave a slow nod and returned to his paper. Olivia stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for her floor. The doors slid shut with a quiet hiss, and for the first time since leaving the library, she was alone. The moment the elevator started moving, her phone vibrated again. She sucked in a sharp breath and hesitated before looking down. Another message. "He's already inside." Olivia's chest tightened. She whipped her head around, scanning the empty space behind her. The walls of the elevator felt like they were closing in, the small overhead light casting eerie shadows against the metal surface. She pressed herself against the side, her thumb hovering over the emergency button. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just a prank. Someone was watching her. Someone knew where she was. The elevator slowed, the ding of the arriving floor ringing in her ears. The doors slid open. Her hallway stretched ahead, quiet and undisturbed. She stepped out cautiously, heart pounding. Her apartment was just at the end, the door locked, the lights inside off. Everything looked normal, but normal didn't mean safe. With shaky fingers, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. Darkness swallowed her. The faint glow from the streetlights outside barely reached the living room window. She flicked on the nearest lamp, flooding the room with warm, artificial light. Nothing was out of place. The couch, the bookshelves, the kitchen counter, everything exactly as she had left it. She let out a shaky breath and double-checked the door, locking it behind her. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe exhaustion was getting to her. She moved toward the bedroom, ready to shut herself in for the night, when something caught her eye. Her reflection. She turned toward the mirror by the entrance, the one she passed 100 times without a second thought. But this time, something was wrong. She was standing there, but behind her wasn't empty space. A shadow, faint, blurred, just enough to make her doubt her own vision. She spun around, nothing. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps as she turned back to the mirror. The shadow was gone. She closed her eyes for a moment, willing her heartbeat to slow down. It's fine. It's fine. She was just tired, stressed, seeing things. But then, the whisper came. Soft, just behind her ear. "You can touch me, but you can't help me." She turned so fast she nearly lost her balance. But the room was empty. Her hands trembled as she backed away, nearly stumbling against the wall. Her phone buzzed again, still clutched in her hand. This time, she didn't want to look, but she did. You already did. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thick and heavy. She could hear her own heartbeat, too loud, too fast. She wanted to scream, wanted to run. But deep down she knew it was too late. Whatever she had touched tonight, had followed her home.